Welcome to No Compromises, a peek into the mind of two old web devs who have seen some things. This is Joel.
And this is Aaron. I like to tell this story a lot about when I worked with some RPG programmers who work on the AS400, which is a medium frame computer, a little bit older school. It's a green screen, they call it. You probably use it, you just don't know it.
All right, Grandpa.
They're in insurance companies, they're in banks, all these
Right.
different stuff. So I worked at a company that had a number of those programmers, and I mean there was some challenges between our two worlds communicating.
hmm
Like they would print out code and hand it to me. That was
Oh,
that was weird. But there was also some stuff I kind of put that stuff to the side, and I was able to learn a lot from them because they had been programming a lot longer than I had. And one of the things they really kind of hammered into my head was design patterns.
okay.
And so I'd even written a book now on PHP design patterns.
hmm
But there's one that pops up a lot that I find pretty interesting that people have opinions on. And, we're not ones to stray away from having opinions on things. So I thought I'd talk about a little bit about the singleton design pattern.
I am I want to say I'm excited, but it sounds kind of boring, Aaron. You got to make this interesting. Like you got it started good with the RPG because I thought, oh, role-playing games, like this is gonna be
Oh,
interesting, but no, that's okay. All right. I want to hear. I'm expecting the spicy take, some sort of controversial opinion. So let's hear
well,
it.
you're not going to get
Okay.
that.
All right.
But no, it's actually glad you responded that way because a lot of people like their eyes kind of gloss over
Yeah.
when you talk about design patterns. They're like, well, that's
Yep.
boring. It's
Right.
like, well, is accomplishing the task easily in a correct way and getting money and seeing your visions come to life boring? Then maybe
No.
you're in the wrong job. But no, design patterns, just for those who aren't familiar, is just basically patterns that we've developed in any programming language that kind of are the same going from each one to each one. And they're like,
hmm
if you have to do this particular set of like requirements or task or whatever, here's one way that a lot of
Yeah.
people have proven to be good, best practices that is maintainable, that is efficient, that a lot of people understand.
Yeah, I like that point because it's sometimes, in the Laravel world, we think about like, oh, what applies to Laravel, what applies to PHP, but like you just said, this is cross programming languages. These are like general purpose concepts that can be broadly applied.
Yeah, you want to get better at Laravel, learn a different language as well.
Yeah.
There's all these different cross sections and stuff. But
Yeah.
so the one I want to pick out because there's many. I mean, it depends on who you ask. There's many different ones, but singleton is the interesting one because there seems to be some confusion on how that's used or why you might use it.
hmm
So a quick definition of what singleton is:
Please. Yep.
it's basically the idea that when you make an object from a class, so like new errand service or something like that,
Okay.
that you really only ever have one instance of those ever
hmm
through the life cycle of this code.
Okay.
Okay, so there's times when you can use a service or object over and over and over, and then there's make a new version, and there's other times when you might just want to keep it just one instance ever. And I want to talk a little bit about why you might do that, why you
Yeah.
might only want one instance of something.
Right.
And so there's a couple of reasons. First is actually speed.
hmm
So there's a lot of different things to consider here, but one of the things would be, is this working with maybe a third party, or does it have to compile is too strong of a word, but does it have to
Right.
build something programmatically that takes some time,
Yeah.
that can be reused? Does it have to do some sort of handshake with your other code? There's all these different things. So basically, there's this concept that it's expensive
hmm
to make a new instance of this.
Okay.
And if we don't always have to make a new instance of it, why would you?
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's easy even for my small brain to understand. So I'm with you so far.
And then there's also this idea that maybe you make an instance of it and then have to configure it during the
hmm
instantiation or afterwards or whatever. And then you want that configuration to be the version of the service or object or whatever that you use through the rest of your request lifecycle. So there's also configuration.
So, and the configuration isn't like, oh, it's not like a subset of performance where the configuration takes a lot of time, but it's more about like consistency of configuration.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like for example, like, and again, this is why I thought this was a little bit more controversial in a way because people will right away maybe disagree with this.
Mm,
But let's just say you have a multi-tenant, system.
okay.
You could determine what tenant this code is working on right now, and then add that as context to a service.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have to determine every single time you need that service
Right.
what the context is. So you can just determine it once, set it, and then keep it as a single instance, and then you're good to go.
Okay.
So the question probably next is like, well, why does this even matter? Why are we talking about this as like a sort of um, process or procedure or design pattern
Hmm.
if we can just pass things along through variables, global variables, or things like that, right?
Sure. Right.
Which is not a great idea. We don't want to work with global variables. So if you're thinking about it in the context of maybe a newer way of doing things with dependency injection,
Hmm.
that's where this becomes really powerful. So in Laravel, we know that there's a lot of automatic dependency injections through, its magical interpreting, the type
Yeah.
inted parameters and different methods.
Yep.
And so this idea of this singleton allows us to configure it maybe once or create it once or whatever, either when it's first used or even in one of our service providers or something like that. And then whenever our dependency injects again, we can get that same instance of it.
And so the thing that's using it doesn't even have to be aware that this is a singleton or not. It's like something that the service container, you configure it there, and it's just the framework takes care of it for you at that point.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So there is expenses obviously with this too, though. So when you think about whenever we have something like a singleton and we create it, that means that chances are we're not doing any garbage collection immediately. So we're not unsetting it. We're keeping it available through the life cycle of our request, which could be many things. And we're not necessarily caring about the memory that it uses. So
Sure.
there's other sides to this too. Is like you don't want to
Yeah.
make everything a singleton
Right.
because it makes garbage collection or like there's just a lot of ceremony in setting one up.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that once you have an instance of it, you can't create another instance and things like
Hmm.
that. So there's been pushback on people using singletons too because it's like, well, then I have to have something built or I have to keep it in memory or it doesn't feel very compartmentalized. So that's why all these different design patterns, we're just talking about one in specific, but are taken on a case by case. So when would you want to use this versus when would you not?
Right. And um, just to clarify one thing, because PHP is maybe a little unique in the way that the code is executed in the context of a request, for example. Like, let's just talk about
Mhm.
web PHP. So when we're talking about a singleton, it's really for the life of a single request, which is a single person or user coming into the system. It's
Right.
not like for the life until you reboot your web server or something, right? It's scoped
Right.
to the request, yeah.
Well, you could use it in like a console command that's always running
Or a
or like,
job,
some,
yeah,
yeah, job.
yeah,
But that's still usually one request. And then depending on how you have your stuff configured, it'll unset it or not.
right.
So that's another thing to keep in mind is if you're going to use something, what are all the flashy new tools, Joe? Where things are running all the time. I can't think of their names, but
What, like
you
Franken
know,
PHP or like that
yeah,
sort of stuff,
those
Octane, yeah,
those sort of things when you have to make sure that you are
right.
very careful with that. But then again,
Yes.
there's that benefit of well, we want something speedy, so we should only do the slowest, most expensive thing the
Yeah.
least amount of times that we need to.
Same
So
same principle.
there's a lot of times when we talk about consistency, so we come up with this idea that if you do it this way, you should always do it this way. But this is that
It'd be
one
nice.
sort of yeah, this is that one sort of thing where it makes a little bit more sense to look at it per instance, no pun
Oh,
intended, or per context or whatever, and say,
yeah.
does it make sense for this to be a singleton or should it not be?
Well, and you can always sound smarter by when somebody asks you a question, you can say, "Well, it depends," and then you like can like show your wisdom and experience. But in this case, it truly does depend. Um, one other thing I was thinking of in terms of benefits, like so this word singleton encapsulates everything we just explained over the last several minutes. And so, like, once you build up a library of these design patterns in your mind, like, even within a team, it kind of makes communication shorter, right? Like, you can just say
Hmm.
the word singleton without having to explain, oh, we should probably like optimize the performance by keeping this in memory and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's a shared language that is
Right.
useful too.
One of the things I think is kind of weird is that you can fake being asleep, but you can't fake being awake.
So, first of all, I so much relate to the idea of faking being asleep because there are many times where people in my family are asking me to do something. I'm like, you know what? If I just pretend I'm asleep, I don't have to like get up and let the dog out that's barking or investigate that noise in the middle of the night. So, anyways, I had never
Well,
thought.
that second one was far worse. Like I get the dog, but I don't have to. I fake being asleep so I don't investigate that noise in the middle of the night.
It's nothing. It'll be fine. That's my mantra. It'll be fine.
There was some crashing downstairs, but if I pretend I'm asleep, my kids or my wife will go
Yeah.
check out.
Yeah. If it's that important, they'll get out of bed and look, right?
All
I'm at peace.
right, so let me tell you Joel's address here.
Oh boy.
Joel said he liked this episode of the podcast a lot because he didn't have to do much. But if you want to see something that Joel does every day,
Then head over to masteringlaravel.io and sign up for our newsletter full of Laravel tips.